Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much to everyone that's joined this call live. It's an exciting call that finally get to share a little bit more about this exciting new book that Brian Schaefer has penned under his pen name Kichu. So tonight I think we'll refer to him as Kichu in this call if he's okay with that.
Yeah, and, hi everybody. Great you could join us.
So thanks everyone for being here. If you're not aware, Brian's been spending a lot of time behind the scenes amongst a busy schedule, coming down to Adelaide, running workshops, doing his normal clinic duties, as well as his normal duties and chores and everything else going on in his busy existence to pen this wonderful book. And I have to say, I'm one of the blessed few that had the opportunity to proofread it along the way, and how it evolved and changed, and the amount of time that's gone into being able to share this wonderful material with the world is something special to witness it come to full fruition. And I'm sure Brian will be able to share with us a bit about the inspiration, who's going to enjoy the book, why it's a hell of a lot different to the nature of life, a completely different type of book, and really looking forward to what you got to share, Brian. So thanks again for being here, and I'll pop a link to where you can buy the new book. There's printed copies as well as the ebook available, ready to go, just in time for Christmas. And Brian, let us know all about Inward Bound.
All right, thanks for the intro, Mark. Yes, it's been a very interesting year, in fact. I only conceptualized this book just over a year ago, I think. And those of you that know that I have explored all the plant medicines quite intensely. About a year ago, I did some plant medicines that I got shown a particular experience, which I can't really go into because I don't want to give too much away about this book. And it's very hard to talk about it because there's so many things in it that if you find out one thing, it sort of ruins the surprise a little bit. So there's one of the stories actually came to me in just a single moment. And that was the king, the end of the line story. There's 5 stories, and the first one is The King and the Sage. It's a revamp of a blog I did years ago. That happens to be a expansion on a little parable or fable that I read about back in 1991. It was just like a little metaphor type thing. And then the next story is called The Tale of the Tadpole. And that's another story that I've sort of expanded on, another little fable type story, and put all my own spins to it all. And then there's the End of the Line. That's completely new. That's the story that came to me in a moment, which in that moment, that's when I realized I was going to write the book Inward Bound. And then there's another one called The Flower Story, and that evolved over time. And then the last one is called Reinventing the Wheel, which is my personal story, and that rounds it off and explains how the whole lot comes together. So there's a condition that when you read the book is that you're not allowed to ruin the surprise for everybody else who's yet to read the book. I think Mark ruined it for his wife Dallas. You know, it's like, duh. You know, you got to just let people read it and have their own little surprises and little experiences reading it. So yeah, it's been a rather intense year. I thought, it must have been about October last year that I thought I realized I was going to write the book. I was even hoping to get the book finished as an ebook before Christmas last year, but then I don't remember what freaking tsunamis came into my life at the time, but I didn't get anywhere near writing it, even though I had all the skeletons of all the stories there. I think it started out as 4 stories and I added another one in. And then, so yeah, I'm not going to go too much into what each of the stories is about, but I will tell you a story about the Kichu side of things, because Mark's wife Dallas suggested that I need to explain to people how and why I wrote it under the name Kichu. And I'll just quickly tell you the story because I don't really want to have to sort of repeat this story too often. As you know, I don't like repeating myself. But how I came to be Kichu was when I went to India the first time in 1991, I connected with the masters that I spent time with. And then in 1992, I went back and I connected with a lot of different people, like local Indians and that sort of thing. And I made some very good friends back in 91 and 92. But in 92, I met a different group of people. And one particular day, I won't get, those of you that know me know the whole story, but sorry, it's just a bit breezy, my door blew open. The story of how I came to be called Kichu was I was with a friend one day, and we were sitting under the shade of the tree because we were trying to go to a museum and it was too busy, so we decided we'd just sit and talk. And she said to me, your name is too difficult for Asians to pronounce. And, you know, they, because my name's Brian, it's a bit like Japanese people can't pronounce R. And a lot of this is in South India, a lot of people can't go Brian either. They go Brian or Brian or something like that. They just can't hear it. So she was sitting there and she's going, I'm going to give you an Indian name. I said, okay. And she sat there and thought, and then she goes, I know, I'm going to call you Kichu. So then after that moment, I was called Kichu. So for like maybe, must have been at least 10 years, everybody knew me as Kichu. It was only when I tried to be normal again. That was back in 19, no, it wasn't 19, it was 2004, 2005. I started calling myself Brian again. It used to break my ears, but I got used to it again. And then that whole period of my life crashed and burned severely. And then, so now with all the things that I've journeyed through and experienced since, I feel like I've come back full circle to be Kichu again. So, you know, there's a lot of people who still call me Kichu, even though most of the people in my life now only really know me as Brian. And yeah, so I don't really mind being called either way. The funny thing is that Kichu and Brian, if you look at it in terms of numerology, it's exactly the same. So yeah, so that's why it never really bothered me either way. But that's how I came to be Kichu. So that's why people called me Kichu, because in India, I was in India for so long. Everybody who I met in India, I went and traveled with and stayed in their countries around the world, they all called me Kichu. So the idea of ever going back to being Brian at one point would have been ridiculous. But in my effort to sort of fit into the world, I sort of went back to using Brian. Plus, when you're in a professional sort of environment, I get tired of having to explain the whole story. So it's just easier to go by Brian. Whereas now, you know, that part of me doesn't exist anymore. So I'm happy just to be Kichu. So just so as you know, Kichu, it actually is the sweet form of Krishna. It's the pet name. It's like Mick is to Michael. So Kichu is short for Krishna, and it's mainly a South Indian name. So so that's how I came to be called Kichu. And so the book itself, like the stories in it, The King and the Sage, The Tadpole Tale, they are essentially not my creations as such. I just put all my own interpretations on them and expanded them beyond recognition mainly. They are stories that I used to share with people to transmit the understandings that they carry. I won't go into it all because I don't want to give the game away much, but each one of them has exact messages. And the messages in The King and the Sage and The Tadpole Tale, as the book evolves through those 5 stories, so by the time you get to my story, the whole thing just comes together and makes sense. Well, hopefully it makes sense. So then those stories are sort of inspirational in that sense, and they're presenting all the basic things that most people don't ever stop to think about. So those stories I used to tell a lot to a lot of people too in clinic and at the events. And then what happened was when I wrote the book The Nature of Life, which basically was a dismal failure, because those of you that know the mathematics around the book, The nature of life was level 13 out of 18 levels. That's for people who were genuinely seeking wholeness. And as you know, there's not a lot of people who are genuinely seeking wholeness or have got the development and the integration to take on that level of information. So that book basically crashed and burned, and my life went with it at the time. So then when I started going into it, and when I talked to that millionaire mentor that one time, and I realized that I have to stop trying to work from the top down and do the bottom up, then I realized I needed to write the storybook, and the lowest form of education is storytelling. So what I've done is I've taken all the essence out of the nature of life and put it into the 5 stories within Inward Bound. So it's presenting all the same truths in a story which is not personal, so people can read it just like any other novel. And the other thing is a lot of the stories that are in the nature of life were my own personal stories, and I wanted to actually share some of my own personal stories in Reinventing the Wheel as well, and give people a bit more of an open understanding, open view of who I am, because I'm not the person who just writes books and does seminars and workshops. I'm the guy who still loves kart racing like the guys and I did yesterday. We went for a bit of a race down the kart track. And so I still like having fun doing that. I'm still the person who is wanting to be able to be liberated and spontaneous to do everything I love doing at the end of having shared all this. All the information and all the roles I play, it's not who I am. I'm the person at the other end of all this. And so I might just share this with you as well. The stories explain the nature of consciousness, and the way that I explain it is how I directly experienced it myself. And it's a bit like any child does a jigsaw, or even any adult that does a jigsaw puzzle, they don't usually just do it once. You do it multiple times. So when you look at the nature of consciousness, everything is everyone. So we're actually experiencing ourselves solving the puzzle that comes with that lifetime as that person. So this is where, when you look at it in terms of individuals, the other movie that I like sharing with people is Next, and how he's looking at all these different timelines, and he finds the timeline where there's success or whatever. And then at the end, I won't tell you the story, but he then goes back in time again as well. So those of you that know me, that I've actually really opened up to, understand that my consciousness is essentially one of a time traveler. So and this is something I shared with the interview with Pete Evans, is that there's ways of traveling within time, within the dualistic world, and then there's ways of traveling beyond time, which is within consciousness. So there's 2 ways of time traveling. And I travel within consciousness. And once you actually understand how to go to the 0 point within consciousness, then you can meditate, and you can just travel into and become anything, anywhere, anytime. So this is what I explained a little bit about in Reinventing the Wheel, and how the other stories sort of feed into that experience. So I don't want to give too much more away than that, if I haven't already given too much away. It's introducing the concepts in a much more palatable way than in a 600-page textbook. So this is the book itself, just here. So it's only a small book. It's only 210 pages, A5 compared to the A4 of the nature of life. So, anybody might be able to sit down and read it in a day or something. So it's packed full of messages and everything. And like the nature of life, I say people would need to read that 7 times. And as much as I've said that, and now the people are reading it to the 6th time, that seems to be becoming more and more true. Whereas somebody who's read the Inward Bound is already saying they need to read it at least three times, because there's so many layers to the stories. I don't know whether you would agree, Mark, but yeah.
Yes, I've just been waiting for my printed copy so I can get stuck into it again.
Yeah, well, they'll be there soon. So yeah, maybe before Christmas. So
all good.
Yeah, so it's going to be one of those things where you will probably want to read them at least 3 times just to get the full weight of it. Because,
But if I can emphasize that, just to jump in there, Brian, you know,
yeah,
a lot of people that are familiar with the nature of life and they pick that up and see that it's literally a textbook and they go, "Oh, there's no way I could get through that." Inward Bound it's a storybook. It's a 210 page storybook, and it's very, for most, I would say, easy, easy reading with the depths of the messages within it. But I've found people that started the nature of life, but then bought Inward Bound. They've been able to connect with Inward Bound instantly and found the inspiration then to go on and be reinvigorated to start reading the nature of life again. So
yeah, that was a good point. So a lot of people bought The Nature of Life and weren't able to read it. And again, I explain in the book exactly how and why people would find it difficult to read. But I encourage everybody to continue reading The Nature of Life, because all the problems you come up against in reading The Nature of Life is actually still developing the pathways which connects you to the nature of life. So by reading the book 7 times, you're actually developing the pathways to help you connect with everything that's missing in your life. Right? And I give analogies throughout the book as to how and why we come to that point where we're missing the point, and we can't even connect with something even though it's right in front of us. With reading The Nature of Life, and like Dylan, one of the guys that's staying here at the moment, he's read it 6 times, and he says, it's 7 books in one, because every time you read it, it's a different book, and it's actually true. Yeah. So because you go to a whole new depth, it's like another level of the torus. This one here, can you see that? Yeah.
Yep.
So each time you read it, your consciousness expands to another level. So you're not the same person each time you read it. So you will grow and develop connections without you even realizing it. And that's the same with the Inward Bound, is that it's very soft. Like they said, the last form of education is storytelling. That's why the Bible is all stories, what do they call them? The Book of Matthew, is that what they call it? So it is a book. There's a storybook about the life of someone. So in that way, it's not confrontational. People aren't just being bombarded by facts. And like somebody who used to be close to me said that they never appreciated, what I've done in terms of the nature of life, where every single sentence is a fact, until they read people like Eckhart Tolle and the Dalai Lama and Matt Kahn, where it's all just, fluffing pillows sort of thing. Their words, not mine. They don't actually present any truth. It's just all philosophy and theories. And that's my phone going off. I didn't realize. I thought it actually turned it off. So with the Inward Bound, it takes people from the very basics of what I talk about all the way through to the most complex and very deep interpretations of consciousness itself. It's just understanding basic principles of life all the way to understanding consciousness itself and where people are in relation to that. And that's why if you read it multiple times, you'll get more grounded within yourself and more connected to the universe through doing so. Because the nature of it all is that it becomes self-evident and indisputable and undeniable by the end. Yeah. So, anything else you want to add there, Mark?
Not to add. I guess with the inspiration within it, who do you feel you'd like it to connect with? Who's the types of people? I mean, anyone and everyone, but.
Yeah, well, this is where I had trouble. When I talk to a millionaire mentor, that sort of stuff, they say you've got to sort of have a target audience, and you have to write it with a person in mind. And I could never really do that for my material and for my events. Marketing my material is an absolute nightmare because it is the whole spectrum. Mark's laughing. He knows how true it is. It's like, the challenge that I'm up against is when people say to me, oh my God, your information is beyond words. Well, if it's beyond words, how does word of mouth help with, marketing through word of mouth? And no one's been able to come up with an elevator speech. So, everyone's still struggling with how to put into words what I'm talking about. I still can't do it. It still amuses me, but as much as it frustrates me, because it'd be nice to be able to just sum it up and say that, put it on the back of a business card or something. So I don't really have a target audience, and it actually hurts my head to have to think about who to target it. But like I was just saying to the guys here today, I would like to think that if I went back in time and handed a copy of The Nature of Life to myself when I was 17 and a half and left high school, I would like to think that I could sit there and just absorb it. But I was severely dyslexic at the time, and I didn't even know what I know now about how and why I couldn't read. I probably would have read the whole thing backwards like I used to. I probably would have got it, but it would have been a challenge. Like, I had a young guy come and pick up Inward Bound the other day. He's only 24 years old, and he was struggling to read The Nature of Life. And it's a fact that 90% of people have got some form of dyslexia or learning difficulty. So that's why when you approach reading the book in the same way as you do the 6 in the circle with your finger and your foot. You just go at the speed where you're getting it right. And that helps you develop and build pathways, which then integrates. And then, like I talk about in the book, the more you switch on, stimulate, activate, build up, strengthen, and coordinate, when all the fingers build up and strengthen to be able to then coordinate into a function, all the different pathways in your brain function to perform a different task, which opens you up to something that's new. And this is what I was talking about previously, just in the Draw Your Sword talk, is that it's the lack of development and integration that's stopping people from being able to grasp new facts of information and new truths, and because they're at a too low a level of brain function. So to bypass all the neurological deficits and all the personality disorders, that the Inward Bound is basically like hitting a narcissist over the head with the truth and having them retaliate. That's essentially the reaction I've got from the book. But the Inward Bound is more sort of surreptitiously, sort of planting a very big seed, or lots of little seeds even, through each story. And whether people agree with the stories or not, it doesn't matter. How much truth's in the story doesn't matter. It's still the essence of the truth within it. And everybody's going to interpret that differently. And they're going to interpret it differently each time as well. So in terms of who it targets, it's targeting, again, the whole spectrum. I deal with everybody on the human experience, from the tip of the comet tail to the leading edge, and everything in between. So the whole idea of The Nature of Life is to explain to people how to find what's missing and put it back and stay there, and use that as a foundation to grow, to continue to grow, because our natural state is to continue to grow, not just maintain balance. So, but that's putting back what's missing. But people haven't even stopped to realize that there's something missing. So if you say to somebody who's essentially a narcissist that there's something missing, they'll take offense to that. Whereas if it's actually presented to them in a way where what's missing is in a character of a story, then they're going to be much more open to receive the truth when it's not directly aimed at them. And if they're sitting there trying to read The Nature of Life with a learning difficulty or with a personality disorder that's got their filters on, then it's going to be very confronting, or they're going to be dismissive of the relevancy of it. Whereas because it's all just soft and very impersonal, hopefully people will still absorb the messages of it without taking things personally and seriously, which was what Nature of Life tended to do with people. Because so this is where, I'm now in inspiration mode, but when I'm in information mode, I talk quickly, boom, 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 because it's all just facts, right? Whereas inspiration, it's open and it flows according to each individual. So, a person may, they won't be the same person they were when they started to read The Nature of Life as when they are when they finish. And the same with the Inward Bound, right? It's going to be taking them on a very gentle sort of story, the journey. And the journey is inwards. And whereas the nature of life, it was more factual, which means they had to develop on concepts, which then they had to apply, practice, and cultivate. And in the modern world, where everything's just going crazy in the opposite direction, that was just too hard basket for most people. Whereas this is just more read the story, take it or leave it. But even so, if you've read it once, the seeds will be there, and they will be planted, and they will germinate. It's like something that it's sort of I haven't done it in a subliminal way, or in a what do you call it, like in a what do they call it, the power of suggestion or anything like that. It's just a simple story, and you know, it's not meant to be a mystery or anything like that of what the messages are. It's supposed to be, you know, very obvious. Yeah. So anybody, anywhere, at any time can be ready for it. You know, like what I was going to say is, if a person is in a really bad way in the human condition, either the nature of life or the inward bound, it may be exactly what they need at that point to put back what's missing, to start the whole transition back into the conscious paradigm, and then, you know, the transformation that comes from after that. So again, I can't make any claims about it because it's all it's all too soon, but it'll be interesting to see where this book's at in, say, 2 years' time, you know, compared to where the nature of life is. I think I published that in 2016 or 2015, I'm not sure. Yeah, it was 2016. So, you know, what are we now? That's 2020. Is that 4 years ago? 5 years ago. Yeah. So, you know, essentially that's just, you know, been treading water this whole time. So hopefully inward bound is more accessible for people, and they can extract the inspiration out of it a lot easier. And then, well, the idea is to actually embody the essence of what I'm talking about, and then share it with everyone around you. So that's the whole journey. So the journey is very inward, but there's a point where, like I was saying, with the Supreme Divine meditation and the Shakti Put meditation in the previous call, once you get to that point where you're radiating, emanating, resounding love, light, and life to all, then, you know, the nature of it is that we are here to live and share the truth. We're not just live it, but we're here to share it. That's the meaning of life, is to have fun, and the purpose of life is to share that with as many people as possible. So you can't help but experience the inspiration in the inward bound to then want to share it with others. That's the whole purpose of the book as well. So it's not just me writing the story to get it off my chest, that's a lot from a personal to the collective thing. It's like there's so many things in that book that I just wanted to get off my chest and write, that I didn't want to have to go and put it all into another textbook and explain it all. Just a simple message, which is potentially transformational in someone's life, and just deliver it in a short and sweet way, and without having to go into all the, you know, the psychology and the maths and the physics of it all. Yeah, so that's fun for me, you know. And like I said, you know, ideally, I wrote it for something that the 17-and-a-half-year-old self back in 1983 would have gravitated towards. And the inward bound, I would like to think that it would just, you know, capture anybody's heart and mind, regardless of where they're at. Yeah. So, like, as you know, I deal with the whole spectrum within humanity. I deal with the most evil people on the planet, and I deal with the most divine people on the planet. And I wrote it for everybody, essentially. So, you know, that's the nature of, that's what I do. The whole spectrum is the name of my website. So I share the truth in a way that everybody on the spectrum can connect with it and gain some essence out of it. So.
You hit on the word accessible there before, Brian, which obviously the way in which it's written is extremely accessible to people. However, it's also, in terms of price, it's accessible as well. So it's a $28 for a printed copy, plus $10 postage, and the ebook's $18. So, you know, there's a number of people who have been out there that have attended events and so forth and go, oh, geez, I'm not sure if I can drop $210 on the nature of life. it's a wonderful way to get into, a little bit further into the material you've got to share at a price that's affordable for yourself. But then hopefully some of you will connect with the material and be inspired to gift it. We see these other series of books like the Celestine Prophecies and the Anastasia books and so forth that people are out there gifting all the time. I'd love to see it be one of those books that can be a special gift that people can share with us, which is the essence of it, is sharing it with others. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. And people have asked me to sort of describe what it's like, and yes, it is. It's designed to be a little bit like the Celestine Prophecies or the Ringing Cedars and that sort of stuff series. And just so as you know, I've already got enough content to write a second storybook. So this is probably going to be, maybe one of 6 different storybooks. I'm guessing at this point there'll be 6, and they are very accessible to people because the wind's picked up and my chart's coming down. So, like I said to this young guy the other day that came to pick up a copy for his mum, I said to him, I'd encourage you to read The Nature of Life because there's 30 years worth of research in it. It took me 18 years to write all that up. And so reading The Nature of Life will put yourself 30 years ahead of where you're at, right? So rather than actually have to read, like Mark just said, to fork out $210 on the textbook, the essence of The Nature of Life is now in something that's accessible, something that's short to read. You could probably read it in a day. And then have the essence of what I share in The Nature of Life, delivered within that time. And I hummed and hawed on the cost of it all, and obviously the cost of The Nature of Life, and the time it took me to write it. Obviously, it didn't make me any money, and I'm hoping that by having the book affordable and the sales of the book will help fund the next book, which will be the Adelaide meditation book, and the next story book. So I'm hoping to get the Adelaide meditation book finished by the end of January, and I'm hoping to get the next story book finished probably shortly after that. So it took a lot more to do Inward Bound than I expected, because I did rewrite the whole book at least 7 times. That's where it started off just as a short, sharp story, and then I thought maybe it was only going to be 100 pages, but it ended up being 210. And because each time I thought that I had finished, I'd either meditate or have an insight where I needed to add another little part of the story in to sort of add more weight to the story or deepen it or something like that, or make it easier to understand or connect the dots. So it took a long time to do that, but it's still pretty good that I got the whole thing done within a year compared to 18 years with the Nature of Life. So those people who shared the journey with the Inward Bound, they're all going, oh my God, how did you do that for 18 years with the Nature of Life? And I'm saying, well, tell me about it, freaking cost me everything, that book. So whereas, the Inward Bound, it's a much lighter read, and it is like what Mark said, something that you can share. And once you've actually got people that you can communicate the concepts that I'm presenting in the book, it becomes bloody good fun to just be able to contemplate and share those thought streams with people. So that's what I'm hoping to get through to people. So so just in terms of the price, I hummed and hawed about the price, and then I sort of thought, well, we looked at things like how much is Siddhartha and all the other books like or Paulo Coelho's material, and I just took the average of all that and just agreed on those. And I asked people close to me, and they basically said they're all fair prices. And as things change, I ended up getting quite a lot of them printed to try and keep the price down as well, because initially I was going to make them hardcover, more like the Nature of Life is now, and make them really good quality, but the price was just too much. So I ended up getting them done paperback, and that reduced the price dramatically when I then put everything I had into getting the volume done, and because it's quite expensive, and then that got the price down. So I'm trying to make this as affordable for everybody as I can. I'm just now trying to look at how to get the postage and everything cheaper. I've worked out some ways of making it cheaper, but not for everybody as yet. So the other thing that's left to do with is how to ship it internationally. And but just so as you know, this is where it's extremely time consuming for everybody who does what I do, is to get the book onto Amazon. It's almost on Amazon. I nearly got it done the other day, but being dyslexic still, it's still hard for me to work through some of those things. And but it's almost available on Amazon. And once it's on Amazon, there's an ebook. I'm also going to make it as a print on demand on Amazon for everybody around the world. So that's going to hopefully be within the by the end of the year. I'm hoping we'll get it all sorted, because we've been working really hard on getting that done. But it's just a lot to get your head around. I haven't done Amazon before because I haven't had enough people working with me. I don't have the time or the mental space to work through all the little nuances of working out how to do those things. And whereas now I've sort of pretty well got my head around it. And once we've done it with the Inward Bound, we're going to do the same for the Nature of Life. So the Nature of Life will be on Amazon. The workbook, the Nature of Life workbook will be on Amazon, and both will be on print on demand as well. And so I just upgraded the website since coming back from South Australia, another thing that took a lot of time. We've now got the printed copies and the ebooks of Inward Bound and the Nature of Life available on the website. And I've also got the workbook for the Nature of Life as an ebook on the website as well. So previously, I was only able to have one product that's available, and I just never got around to upgrading the website, whereas now I've done that. And so there's room for me to be able to put as many books on there or things as I want. I'm even going to put these charts, sold individually and collectively. And then once I've got the mental space around it for doing it, I'll make a bundle where you can buy the printed copies of the Nature of Life, the workbook, and the Inward Bound, and maybe get a copy of the ebooks and the charts. I'll do different packages where you can just buy them all together. So just keep the cost down for everybody. So now that we've worked out the whole postage and shipping costs and all that sort of stuff, I'll try and work towards reducing that. And so there's plenty more to come. So the idea is to get it available to everybody through Amazon as soon as possible. And as much as I don't like supporting them, there is another way that we're going to do it, and it's through all the other platforms. And once it's maybe through other platforms, I'd like to be able to drop the Amazon thing, because I don't want to support that culture, that business. And there's other platforms which I've already got people working on, sort of making all those connections. And then we'll try and eventually we'll hopefully be once the whole Forest Foundation puts down some roots, we'll be able to hopefully have our own platform where we'll be able to just distribute everything. So yeah.
And if anyone happens to pick up on the replay that watches this video and knows how to consciously and deliberately get books out there into bookland, into the hands of people in a different way that we may not have thought of, please drop Brian an email, and any suggestions would be open and welcome, I would say.
Yeah, it's a bit of a minefield for somebody who's new to the industry, but it's all right when you're just doing it yourself privately, but then that's not sustainable and financially viable. But
too many trips to the post office for Polly.
Yes, yeah, Polly's my camper van, so yeah, she misses the open road. So so the Nature of Life, it is only A5 size, so it does work out to, it's about 357 grams or something like that. So it's actually affordable if you buy multiple copies up to however many kilos it is. I can't quite remember what the packaging things are. So if you do buy multiple copies, you end up paying the same price. So it's up to 2 kilos, and then it's up to 5 kilos or something like that. So
then you're going to have some obviously down here in South Australia soon to pick up, and some in Melbourne, right?
yeah, that's right. So there's going to be some in Warburton with Jenny at the Diamond Light Healing and Meditation Centre. And then there'll be some at Neil Rennie's clinic in Heathmont. And there's another lady, Esther, who will have some in south of there. I can't quite remember the suburb. Erica will have some in Ocean Grove. And then in South Australia, Mark will have some in Aldinga Beach. And then Dylan and Jed, or actually no, just Dylan. Dylan will have some in Kimber or Venus Bay and
West Coast. Yep.
Yeah, and then there's somebody else as well. Anyway, but they will try to have distribution places around, just so people don't have to spend the money on the postage. So yeah, try to make it affordable and accessible. So other than that, I don't really want to talk too much about the book because it's too easy to give the whole thing away. So it's actually, I want to keep it as a bit of a surprise for people and help them, you know, find the layers of it and connect the dots and that sort of thing. So it was a fun thing to write. It was a lot different to being in that flow than it was being in the nature of life. You know, like, you know, you imagine what it's like getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to write the nature of life compared to getting up and writing Inward Bound. It was a very different experience. But it was still challenging getting the whole, you know, the English language is still ridiculously challenging to work with when you're able to say the same thing, you know, 10 different ways with 10 different meanings. And, you know, you're trying to pick the right way of saying it relative to where that story is within the book and the sequence of events. And that was pretty character building. So, yeah. So, and then, you know, I always say, you know, having a thesaurus beside me, like I spent a lot of time going through the thesaurus looking for the exact word I'm looking for as well. So that's always been a challenge. So, yeah, so it was good fun. So I'm actually looking forward to writing the next one now that this whole process is behind us in terms of getting the printing done. And I have to thank Scott Jones at, so I think it was called Southern Impact Printing, is brilliant in Melbourne. I'll put links to his connections in the description below this video as well. He's been absolutely brilliant to work with. He was with me on the nature of life as well as the Inward Bound, and I'm pretty well locked into doing all the future ones as well, because I do want to go with an Australian printer because it keeps people like Scott in a job. He's got a wife and family, and he's done really well to keep the price down for me, and I'm getting other things done through him as well, but more on that later. And yes, so this, as far as launching goes, this is it, this video, and there will be a couple of things I'll be doing on the internet over the next couple of weeks, and you know, some giveaways and some prizes, all that sort of stuff. But I'll announce all that some other time. You know, I've got it all organised. So other than that, is there anything else you want to add, Mark? Anything I've missed?
Well, I think we've pretty much covered it all, unless anyone's got any questions, but you're not allowed to ask anything about what's in the book because Brian's already said we can't.
Is anybody on the... Sorry, Mark. Does anybody on the call who's read the book got anything they want to add from having read it?
Without giving it away? Without
giving too much away?
Kathy just said, thank you, Brian. I think you mean Kichu there, Kathy. Can't wait to read the book, she says. Yeah. There you go. So we've got 17 online here still. But... yeah. All right. Well.
Alrighty. Well,
got any?
I don't have anything else to add. So, if anybody, everyone's downstairs in my lounge room, and so if there's anything I've forgotten to add, just throw it into the chat, folks. So I think I've pretty well covered it all. Yeah. So stay tuned. There's going to be heaps more. I'm on a roll now. Now that Scott's actually changed businesses and he's with another more reliable printing company as well. I hope to keep him in business just with all the books yet to come. And yeah, I've got lots of other ideas of things I want to produce and sell as well. So that's the whole merchandise part of.
Shane's just asked, is the first chapter identical to the blog Re King and the Sage? No.
No, not identical. No, I've reworked that many times over. So yeah, it's very similar, but it's
and
not.
If I can share a little personal story about that, I really didn't connect with King and the Sage that much as a blog, but because I was a new version of me when I read King and the Sage the second time around, or eventually when it made the book, I connected with it on a whole different level and thoroughly enjoyed it. So
yeah, that's the funny thing about the book, because I had, I don't know, maybe 10 different people proofread it, and the proofing experience is a thing of its own. Like we can have 10 people read it, and then like we go back through it once more, we find like 10 different mistakes. It's like, how could 10 people miss it? This was one of those mysteries of being an author and printing and publishing books. But the funny thing about the whole book is that everybody had their own favorite stories. And, like Sam that lives here with us, I think his favorite story was King and the Sage. What was yours, Mark?
Mine's End of the Line.
End of the Line, yeah. Mine's probably End of the Line as well. Yeah, some people like the Flower Story, some people like the Tadpole.
Although I do need to revisit Flower Story.
Yes, after recent journeys, yeah. So just on that note, I'll hint at this, right? One of the reasons why I started to talk about and share the Flower Story is it came from me trying to explain to people my own personal experience of consciousness and within consciousness. So I started sharing a story of a flower, and then out of that came the whole story of the Flower Story. So what I've done is, anybody who's interested in plant medicines and understanding the true nature of consciousness, I used to say, do not do plant medicines until you've read The Nature of Life at least twice. Now, with the simplified essence and meaning of it all, I would suggest read The Nature of Life. Read The Inward Bound at least twice. And the Flower Story itself is enough to help you understand how to navigate plant medicines or any psychedelic sort of thing. It's exactly what people need to know and understand about the nature of things, right? So without giving too much away, everybody who's done plant medicines, having read my book, said it helped them navigate and understand the nature of it all to the point where they did it all very naturally, and the outcome of their plant medicine experience or their psychedelic experience was essentially, when I talk to people who have done it, they arrive at a place where most people don't get to when they do plant medicines. They still get stuck in the dualities of things, whereas people who have connected with my material, they arrive at the point of oneness. How is my phone still going? I've turned it off twice. Anyway.
Must be the same guy that's opening your door.
Yeah, there is an entity here too, just quietly. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So so that's where so the book's going to appeal to people in different ways. But if you are interested in plant medicines, please read The Flower Story. And they all sort of build on each other in a way, but the Flower Story is particularly targeting people who are interested in navigating through the nature of consciousness. So anything else you want to add, or anyone downstairs, did anyone have anything to add?
Nothing there on the chat, so I think we've just gone an hour, and
very good.
Definitely covers all the details.
Yeah, it's fun talking about it, but I've ever since I wrote it, and even when I was sharing it with people like Mark and Dylan and everybody here, I didn't want to actually tell them too much with it because it gives too much away. So if you can honour that, then I mean, it's always difficult talking around any topic, but when it's something that is like we've been talking about, something that's fun that you want to share, you don't want to. It's like ruining the punchline of a joke, sort of thing. So, so we'll just leave it at that. Yeah. So I look forward to getting everybody's feedback on the book. It is something that I did put an enormous amount of time and energy into it, and I hope that everybody gets as much inspiration out of it as I've put into it. And hopefully, like the inspiration in the book will actually transform you in the same ways that when I was given all those inspirations, transformed myself and got me to where I'm at now. Not that it's anywhere in the world, but within myself. It's very different to the average person, as you're about to find out when you read the book. And yeah, and then the beauty of it is you get to share it with everybody as well. So I'm sharing it with everybody, and you get to do the same. So well, thank you everybody, and yeah, I might give another update on it somewhere down the track, and we'll do another couple of videos, Zoom calls, when there's more to share.
Maybe we can have a Q&A and people can share their favourite parts once they've read it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
A book club.
Yeah, without giving it away, though.
Of course.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's probably getting late at your end, and it's still relatively early my end, so I might go and make the most of the night. And thank you, everybody. It's good to see some familiar names on the call, and yeah, look forward to getting everyone's feedback.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us, and thank you again, Kichu, for putting your time and energy and love into another piece of material for us all to connect with. It's very grateful for what you've done.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, everybody, and good night.